Hi, everyone. Well, it's Easter. It's the Saturday before Easter, and I am starting to make the meal. And one of the things that I want to put out is a breadstick, an Italian breadstick called Grissini. Now, the funny thing is, if you go into some Italian markets, you can find them under the word tarale, T-A-R-A-L-L-E. Now, in my husband's family, that meant something entirely different. So I stick with Grissini here so we don't complicate things. But this recipe is from an Italian from Italy, and so everything's metric. So I'm going to do my best to give you some conversions here. As you know, I weigh things out. So I have my scale, and I put my bowl on the scale, I zeroed it out, and I weighed out 260 grams of all-purpose flour. This is all-purpose, unbleached flour. I particularly like this recipe because it has the sourdough in it that, I like to use. So here's my 260 grams of flour. I'm going with 120 grams of water. Now, 120 grams, this is my pharmacy background here, but 120 grams is 4 ounces. So it's easier for me to just weigh to measure 4 ounces than it is to try and weigh it out. So there's my 4 ounces of water. To that, I'm going to add 75 grams ripe sourdough starter is what they're calling it. This is what you would call discard in the sourdough world. Everything that I do is discard. I don't worry about making this thing super bubbly and wait for it to double and then use it only then within a certain window. I do make it bubbly, I do let it double, and then I just use the heck out of it. And that's what this is. This doubled, a day or two ago. So that's my 75 grams of starter. Now, that's just a little over 2 ounces, and that's why I measured it, because it is just a little over 2 ounces, and I wanted to make sure that it comes out right. Here's my 30 grams of extra virgin olive oil, and yes, this is not the place where you use that super, super expensive over-the-top finishing oil, but this is where you pull out the really good green stuff. So there is my olive oil. And finally, I'm going in with 5 grams sea salt or my table salt. I always use table salt when I'm baking, just plain table salt. And 5 grams of granulated sugar. And they're both in here together. And that's it. That's what's going into these grissini. Now, the last thing I'm going to do once this comes together is to add the peppers. So let's give me a minute to get this mixed and I'll come right back. Okay, so I've kind of combined it. It's certainly not smooth or even yet, but at this point I want to add my seasoning. I'm going to end up making probably 2, maybe even 3 batches of this. As I'm looking at it, it's not very much here. Trust me, one of my sons could go through this. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of crushed red pepper to this one. The next one I'll do with my fresh ground black pepper, which, believe it or not, also will give it a little kick. And finally, for those that don't like the heat, I like to do one with Za'atar. It's a nice Middle Eastern flavor, and it will lend a lot of different verbally notes to this. You could do it with herbes de Provence. You could do it with just Italian spices. Heck, you could even just put sea salt on the outside. Now I'm going to keep working this until I get this color consistency nice and smooth all the way through. I'm going to say this is going to take me about 3 or 4 or maybe longer minutes of kneading to get it all worked up. Now, you know me, normally with my sourdough, I like to leave it just kind of shaggy, walk away and let it go. Well, this is a little bit different. These grissini, I need to develop a little gluten in. Otherwise, they just snap back. If you've ever made a shaped dough before, for example, a pizza, let's use that one. Almost everybody's tried to make pizza. And you just can't seem to keep it in the shape that you're trying to get. Even if it's just the size of the circle and it keeps shrinking back, it's because you didn't have enough gluten development. So the gluten development is very important for this type of a recipe. Now, you could go more than that with the red pepper, but I'm going to try a tablespoon to see how much I like them and how hot they are. This is also a pretty new batch of red pepper, so it's got quite a kick to it. I'm surprised I'm not coughing already. So far, I'm not. Don't you laugh. Anyway, so I don't want to bore you. I'm just going to keep working this, and then what I'm going to do is, see, it's getting some gluten already. You can see the movement. You can tell by the way it springs back. So what I'm going to do is put a clear bowl over the top of this and leave it set. This is going to have to go for a few hours, 2 or 3 at least. I want it to double, and then I'm going to shape it, and I'll come back to you then so you can see what we do when we shape these into our nice long bread. Okay, so this is batch 2. I'm already modifying, and usually I wait until I modify it to death before I bring it to you, but you're getting to see the process. So here I've got my fresh ground black pepper, which I did just yesterday for my porchetta, which is in the oven. And every once in a while you hear the beep, that's my meter. So I'm taking about a tablespoon of freshly ground black pepper. And yes, these are going to be, and I'm going in before it really comes together this time because this pepper is so fine. I feel as though I'm going to have a hard time incorporating it otherwise. And you could actually just go right in directly into the flour and really incorporate it into the flour first, which probably will be in the end instructions when I get this all thought through and written out for you. But now I'm gonna work this. So I'm using my broad fister, whatever you call this thing. Danish dough hook. How's that? I'm Italian. That's a lot easier. There's my meter. Now I'm just gonna keep working this until I get a nice smooth dough. And you can see over here, I've got the first one that I made. Okay, so clearly you could do this in a stand mixer, and I have one right behind me. I stubbornly sometimes just decide I'm gonna do everything by hand because, Easter to me is like our other holidays. It's a celebration of love, and I like to really take my time with things. Anyway, you can see how putting the pepper in, incorporating the pepper in earlier is a superior way to go, and I'm going to make that as part of the notes for this going forward, is to incorporate whatever seasoning you plan on putting in earlier on into the flour before you incorporate the rest of the ingredients. So I'm just going to continue on and knead this, and you see how it's just really not going anywhere yet. I don't have the gluten development in it yet. It's going to take another minute or two. And sure, I could have put it in the stand mixer and it would just be going around and around and around. But I don't know, sometimes I really just like to get my hands in it. Today was one of those days. So I'm going to keep working this. I like the amount of pepper that it's got in it. Boys will probably tell me that they like them hotter, but other people have to eat them too. So we're going to stick with this. I'm going to stick with my 1 tablespoon and we'll take it from there. As far as the za'atar goes, I think I would go with a tablespoon of that also, but maybe the first time around I'll go with half of the tablespoon because, it's not a hot spice, but it's a warm spice and it's kind of delightful. The original recipe, the one I'm modifying here, just calls for you to brush olive oil on the sticks and sprinkle them with what you're looking for. Certainly you could do that, but in my family, I think it's just a whole lot easier to have it incorporated in. So I will see you back here in a few hours when these come up to size and shape that I'm looking for, and then we'll turn them into grissini. Okay, so as you can tell, our grissini they didn't puff up, but they definitely have more air in them than they did after I got done rolling them and shaping them. And as I wrote in the instructions, they're about 6 inches wide and about 12 inches long. So now what I'm going to do, this is completely unnecessary to be this ridiculous about it, but I'm going to cut them. I want them to come out about even. So I'm going to cut them about every half inch, and then I'm going to move them to this baking sheet that has parchment paper on it. Now I've seen these hand rolled like a stracciatelle, but I'm not going to go to that. I'm going to just give them a nice stretch, and you can see these are, all things considered, they're pretty short compared to the grissini that you find in Italy. In Italy, they are very, very long, and you see them sticking out of bread baskets along the street and really making displays out of these things. So now that I've got them cut, I don't want them to be that big because this is just going to be on an appetizer when I don't want people really filling up on them. So now I'm going to pick them up and I'm just going to give them a little bit more stretch. I want them to be about the length of that sheet pan. And I'm going to space them out because I am still hopeful that I'm going to get some oven spring. So I've just really, all I've done is just giving it a little pull. I don't want to flatten them out, and that's why I don't want to do the stracciatelle thing because it would deflate them totally, and I don't want to do that. They've been undercover out here for close to 3 hours, just resting and relaxing. Oh, and by the way, I shaped them. I know the last thing you saw was me put them under the glass stove. The glass bowl rest lets the gluten relax. About 20 minutes it takes to do that. And when you do that, rolling them out and shaping this dough becomes a whole lot easier because if you don't let the gluten relax, all you're doing is fighting with it. It's going to keep stretching back. All right, that's it. I'm just going to cut this second one. When the cake I've got in the oven comes out of the oven, I'm going to put these in a 375-degree oven for however long it takes to get them golden and crispy, 25-ish minutes, maybe a little bit longer.
Okay, go ahead. What's that about center two positions?
Center two positions, 1 and 2. These are going to take about 25 minutes. It is that high timer for about 5 minutes in. I'm going to spin them, and I'm going to rotate them twice.
Okay, so we'll be back in 20 minutes. Spin twice,
Spin and rotate.
spin and rotate. We'll be back in 20. Okay, so Darn, what do we got after these came out of the stove?
So these are the red pepper flake. These are the black pepper flake. I did not put fennel in these because I know you don't love that, but I know the boys do. So that will happen next weekend. I do love the fennel in there. But these are actually hotter than the red pepper. They're very crispy. They're very crunchy. I'm going to stack them into a crystal jar and put them on the charcuterie board for tomorrow for Easter. So I hope you enjoy them.
I can't wait. They look awesome. And there's going to be none left by the end of the afternoon. I got a feeling. So say it again so people know how to say this because I always say it wrong.
Grissini.
Grissini. This is an Italian breadstick. You need to make them because they're really easy to make with some sourdough. So I highly recommend it because I love them.